Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this second session in the Fireside Chat series from School of Design, Sushant University. For those of us who are joining us for the first time, I just would like to tell you that these are freewheeling sessions that we have planned around with our guest speakers from the industry and to understand their thoughts, views, and to take on with their journey and how they have been doing in the industry so far. I'm Dr. Himani and I head the Fashion and Textiles program with Sushant University School of Design. So for today's chat, we have Rinku Gupta with us. Rinku has been associated with the fashion and garment industry for over 2 decades, holding important portfolios. She's worked with the global retailers and giants like Gap, Banana Republic, Sainsbury, John Lewis, Landmark Dubai, and now she's with Target Australia. I think she has been having important profiles like business development, sourcing, manufacturing and merchandising for apparel, jewelry, footwear, and accessories. Welcome, Rinku. It's really a
Thank you,
pleasure
Dr.
having
Himani. Thank you, Dr. Himani. First of all, giving me this opportunity to speak to the students. Hi, everyone. And I would say I wouldn't have done such a great job in, introducing myself as you have done. So thank you for that as well. And it's a
you.
pleasure to
I'm
be here on this platform and talk to you all.
It's a pleasure is all mine, Rinku. I think it's going to be a very enriching session with your experience. Our students and participants are going to be immensely benefited.
Thank you so much.
So I think I'll start with a very basic question from coming from the same industry. How's the atmosphere working in the industry? Because is it the craziness that we saw in movie like Devil Wears Prada? Do you remember those days?
I do, going back in time, when you talk of craziness, I think craziness is actually there in every industry. So it's just about, the reality is unless you get your hands dirty, you cannot be anywhere, which is what the movie also shows. But the big message which, I have taken and which I would like to give to everybody is the fact that, you have to have commitments to be where you want to be. You have to have strong work ethics, and most importantly adaptability, which is what we saw in the movie, because unless you have that, you can't succeed. So I would say yes, craziness is good. It's good craziness,
Yeah, I
which
remember those
keeps
days
all of
of
us going.
sampling and order and deadlines of getting fabric in house and trim in
Yeah.
house.
Yes,
Those
so it's fast and furious, as I say. Glamour
yeah.
is there, but only at the outset.
So if you could tell us about your journey so far, Rinku, I think that will be really great.
Yeah, so journey has been exciting, as you've already mentioned. I passed out from National Institute of Fashion Technology in Delhi. So that was at that point in time, it was the only institute of fashion, and then it was associated with FIT. So yes, a lot of glamour at the outset, but I'd say I've been fortunate as well because I got a chance to actually work with all the leading companies, starting from uh, export houses to buying companies. So the journey has been really good, I'd say, on the upward trajectory. And in this journey, what was best was, interactions with people across the globe, from west to east to, like I'd say, from America to Australia to UK to Middle East, as you said. And not just that, interaction with the supplier base, to talking to the suppliers and then talking to the actual workers, who sew the garments. So I would say the most exciting part about it is every day is a new challenge, and you get to meet, different kind of people, and then you learn how to deal with them, because ultimately you need to have to develop the art of getting the work done. So absolutely, the journey has been exciting. Never for a day have I regretted that I should have been in some other industry. So it has been so exciting.
So I think going from man management to fabric management to trim management, all facets, as we have also worked together. So I remember, yeah, And I think a very commendable thing that I remember from your work is that you used to be very, very particular about every sample that would come in house and all those testing that we would do and quality parameters. So, what do you think? I mean, how important is that factor in our industry?
I would say attention to details and basically, ultimately, if you connect with Apple also today, everybody, why do we talk so highly about Apple? It's all about the product. So unless your product is not right, you cannot be anywhere, irrespective of whatever marketing strategies you use, irrespective of how much you put into, making it basically getting the product in the market. The biggest thing is that you have to have the right product. And then unless we get into the nitty-gritties of it, we'll never be successful. So which is what I said earlier also, that it is all about getting your hands dirty. I mean, the devil is in the details. So absolutely, yes, every aspect of the industry, it's just fashion is one part of it, but then from fashion, from design to manufacturing to sourcing to production and then supply chain, because then, I mean, if we look at the companies like Mintras and Amazons of the world, product in itself is not good enough. So you have to have the end to end, I'd say diligence about how best you manage that, because today we are looking at Amazons and Flipkarts of the world, they are delivering it in 2 days time. So I'd say end to end discernment of getting the thing right is what counts, which is what needs to be focused on. So absolutely yes.
Very true, very true. So, I mean, so what prompted you personally to think about and then finally plunge into the garment industry or fashion industry, so to say? Was there
This is an honest
some
this is an honest confession. It was not by design. It just happened by fluke. So I think like all of us, what we do, I mean, when we are in school, we aspire to become doctors and engineers, and then we are in college, we want to do MBA. So I had also taken all the MBA exams, and then of course NIFT, as I said, was that time a happening institute. So, and it was in Delhi. So I got the admission in MBA, but for that I had to travel to, some other city. I just got this opportunity and, I just took a plunge thinking that I would be in the, safe realms of, all the best of both the worlds, one of the best colleges, and then staying close home and take all the liberties and advantage and whatever benefits it gives. So as I said, not by the design, but by fluke, but no regrets, no regrets till date. But yes, at that time, I mean, I started almost two, more than 2 decades back. Some of the designers made big names, Ritu Berry and then Sandeep, Bajaj and all those guys were the time when, those designers had actually blossomed from the times when it took place. So during our times, it was a pride to be associated with NIFT, and there was just one NIFT, which was NIFT Delhi. But then we realized as a country and as a, I would say, the demand of fashion and how, we could all benefit. And I'm so glad today we have institutes like the one that you are representing today, that at least more people have the opportunity to take the profession to next level. So which is a great thing.
so if we talk about retail sector or if we talk about the market, can you just throw some light for our participants about the various buyers that you've been dealing with? What is the difference? What do you see? Like I remember Japan, and even the sizing. We had to learn even the sizing component of a petite size and an American size and UK size. So just for the information, because I think so we do have a lot of buyer base, but each buyer is so different that way.
Yeah, yeah. Each buyer is different and each country is different, I would say. So if you talk about, if you're asking me to tell you my experience in terms of the buyers I've dealt with, I have worked for America, I have worked for UK, I have worked for Middle East, I have worked for Australia. So the big thing is in terms of working, culture in every country is different. So something if we are actually, targeting to work in an industry in that too in an international sector, which is, exports, then cultural sensitivity is one thing that is of prime importance, which we should focus on, because even if our teams today sitting virtually, like I work from India, but my team is sitting in Bangladesh, or I talk to people every day who are coming from China or from Hong Kong or Vietnam. So basically, understanding people and culture is the key thing. And in terms of buyers, again, I would say ultimately you have to get the product right, and that product is what the buyer specification is. So you could be working for a premium brand like Banana Republic, as you mentioned, where the fabric in itself would be so expensive. And then I mean, I worked with a supermarket also where, a mother who's coming to buy food will come and, grab probably clothes for the children. So where, price plays an important role. So I would say, as long as you are ensuring that there is a conformance to standards in terms of what the buyer requirements are, that is taken care of. That is how you are successful. But the key thing is that, again, focus on product. Unless the product is right, nothing can be right. And then product is not what you and I like. That product is when we become the eyes and ears of our respective buyers on what their requirements are. And then on your second question in terms of demographics and all, I mean, we know in Germany that the basic size is big because we find big women. In Australia, we find big women. In Japan, China, that's petite, like the sizes are smaller. So every country has a different size, not just the size range. In fact, the body type is different. So basically, that is the information usually comes from the demographics and demographic analysis that is being done by a respective, brand, I would say. Ultimately, sitting in a center which is actually a production center, like where we are, for example, India, we just need to adhere to the specifications what are being requested by your respective customer. So that is what is of key importance.
Yes, that's truly important. And I think, when we interact with our students, a lot of them have a question, and I think you can answer it pretty well. What is the role of a merchandiser? How do you see as a merchandiser? It's a multifaceted role, as we all understand. So, what are the key roles of a merchandiser as you look at, and vis-a-vis an export
Fantastic.
house or a buying house?
So I would just go back in time where, when we actually learned the definition of merchandiser. And, if you go by the book, the merchandiser is somebody who ensures the right product at right time, in right place and in right quantity. So, I mean, if we go one by one, right product, I think I have spoken enough about the product. Product currently, what I spoke about is what our buyers are asking. But, I would say for some of our design students also, I would say even if we are designing the product, we actually, before designing, we keep in mind our end customer, like who's our end customer for whom we want to design. So product is one aspect of thing. Then price. I mean, you have to offer a value proposition to your customer, which resonates with them. So I could be selling a great product, like, but if I don't have a customer who will buy it at right price, it's not, it's not going to be resonating with the customer. So pricing is important, which is again, I would assume would be one subject that we have studied, and what the students must have studied, that every component, how you cost to make sure that you are giving the right price, right quantity, I would say, right. I mean, exactly, if you are going to, make for a Gucci or a Louis Vuitton, you will only make 50, 100 pieces. But if you are making for, say, a Reliance or a Big Bazaar, which is for mass market, so what quantity? So merchandising in an export house and a buying house is very different from a merchandising. For example, if I work for Gap, a merchandiser in Gap who actually is in America doing merchandising, because he would then study the retail, and then he would actually let us know what is the quantity they want to place a certain order in, which then comes to how many stores are there, in what quantity, I mean, where, how many stores, what percentage of their assortment, what is the budgeting which is given. So it is a very wide subject, merchandising, if we talk from an export house perspective, a buying house perspective, and from the retailer's perspective. And then right time. The time is really sensitive for us because I mean, our product is season specific. You can't sell a sweater in summers and you can't sell a swimwear, in winters. So it is very important that the product lands in the store when it is needed to land. So I would say merchandiser as it is does not do one specific role, but specifically from the side where we are in, representing the buying house or an export house, we have to ensure that we are taking care of these four things. So all our work rotates around these four things: product, price, quality, and timeline.
Absolutely. I think that's very well said. And so, coming back to the times that we all are, the pandemic has hit us big time, especially with this current time. This has been very unprecedented. Last year was still better. So, how do you think that it has hit, or has it hit our trade and business, especially the fashion industry, so to say?
Absolutely, it has hit, and I mean, basically, a strong ripple effect, I would say, both in terms of demand and supply. So, some time back, I was reading, what is the difference pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, and very interestingly, somebody very smartly said that pre-pandemic it was just in time, which means that we just spoke about, timeline, that as long as the goods are landing in the stores at a certain time, we are sorted. And from that, just in time has now become just in case, which means that if something is, going wrong, what is the backup? So there is a lot of work is now being done in terms of mitigating the risks. So I would say when we talk about from sourcing perspective, I mean, say a buyer, if I'm sourcing from only India or only China, so biggest thing that we need to do is to diversify, because tomorrow what happens if a country shut down, or if a specific region shuts down. So basically, as they say, do not put all your eggs in one basket. So diversification from sourcing has become the key thing, because everybody realizes how vulnerable the supply chain is, that it can break anytime. So you have to have your backup ready. You have to have strong partnerships with all, I would say, all contributors in supply chain, be it a fabric sourcing, a fabric mill, for example, a production manufacturing facility, to logistics, to literally the shipping lines, for example. We all probably have heard of what happened in Suez Canal, so much of business got impacted when the vessel was stuck there. Then from retail side, I'd say we have seen a strong integration in terms of, online to offline. I mean, brick and mortar stores are there, but if I'm only limited to that, then how do I manage when the stores are shut? I mean, ultimately, to be successful in business, I have to diversify. So, I mean, a lot of businesses who were focused only on selling on one channel are now wanting to become channel, because they need to have multiple channels, digitalization, offline, online stores. So have, literally a good mix of channels from where they want to sell their product. And of course, technology, because if you don't have technology, then you would lag behind. So I think these are the key parameters which at least COVID had shown us. And with it comes, I would say, resilience, because it's not that you cannot keep on waiting that once things will get over, you will get better. So basically, resilience and flexibility and the ability to pivot immediately as you see there is an impact. I mean, I'd say look at so many of the manufacturers who run the manufacturing units. Literally last year and this year, everybody is making the PPE kits and masks and all. So resilience, that immediately pivot to something which will actually get your income, business. It will keep your business intact. So that is what I would say COVID has taught us, that you need to be really mindful
Even
of how to
international business
mitigate the
like
risk.
and Dior and Gucci, everybody has these masks are coming in, personalized masks. And
Yeah.
the other day I was looking at a mask which was about $800, and I was like, oh my God, this is some mask to be taken care. So
Can you imagine? I know. And the likes of the designers making the mask, we wouldn't even think, I mean, a year and a half, somebody would say, are we crazy? Why would you think we think of that? But look at that, these days, like literally everybody is making masks. Even you go to Amazon, you find 500 retailers, selling different kinds of masks. So yeah, so I'd say that this pivoting from one area to another so as to ensure that you are able to mitigate your risk. So one has to have a business continuity plan to work on, and that is the biggest
Correct.
learning which COVID has taught us.
I think there are some very key definitions, Rinku, that we need to pick up from your chat, like, so, which is absolutely essential. And I'm sure our participants would be listening to it, wholeheartedly. And with mitigation of our own and product diversification as a key point, how do you foresee the retail sector, so to say, in terms of,
Retail, so retail,
multi-channel distribution?
yeah.
Yeah,
So retail, I would say retail has grown and it will continue to grow exponentially. The way retail happens is probably changing. First of all, customer is getting smarter by the day. Initially
yeah,
they had only the option of going to two stores, trying out a product, and then, liking one and letting go of. I still remember, this is very interesting story. One of my buyers, she wanted to attend a wedding and she was looking for a dress for a bridesmaid and she didn't have time to go to the stores. And she said from five different sites, she ordered the dresses and she tried all, and whatever she liked, she kept, and she could return all. So customer is becoming so smart. So basically, I'd say, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, in retail, key things to focus on is digitalization again, because if you are not, I mean, online today has become such a big thing and technology has become such a big thing that because the customer is smart and you have to be innovative, you even have to understand who your customer is, how many times is he visiting your stores, what is he buying, what is the basket size, what is the bill amount and stuff like that. So much of data is coming into play these days. So I would say, if we lag behind in technology,
mm,
we will not be successful. So key things in retail these days, in addition to what we were doing in our times, which I'd say probably till 5 years back, is technology, artificial intelligence, which just not helps you to innovate the product, because we all must have heard of 3D, to
correct.
do sample approvals and stuff like that. Besides that, you want to understand your customer on what is selling, what is not selling, who's buying what, so that you can do the replenishments accordingly. So technology plays a big role. And with technology, one of the buzzword in retail is sustainability these days. And I tell
So,
you why, because everybody across the world is so focused about the environmental impact, especially that our industry is leaving. It is
right.
not even funny, how much of landfill, and especially, the people into fast fashion has got so much of flack, because we used to do, wear a product this week and then dispose it off because it's not fashionable. Like Zara, for example, says they replenishes these many times in a month and stuff like that. But that is not something to be proud of these days. Everybody is talking recycle, reuse. We even for brands, like big brands are actually having stores where they are renting out clothes. You can rent it out and then you can return back. So sustainability is a key thing which one needs to be focusing on. So I would say product will continue to play an important role, but how you retail is important. And two key factors in addition to what was happening in traditional retail is technology and sustainability, to summarize.
Absolutely. So circular fashion is going to play a big role now, and that's what we also
Absolutely.
try to put in our learning and our teaching with the students as well.
Yeah,
That
fantastic, fantastic. So
this
I'm
is a
sure
basic
everybody knows
need.
about. Absolutely. So we are working on BCI cotton, organic cotton, recycled polyester, recycled viscose, reprieve. And every retailer has a commitment, towards actually the country and towards their stakeholders, that somebody wants to go 100% sustainable by 2024, somebody by 2025, zero carbon footprint, and so everybody, in fact, I mean, literally, I mean, forget you and me today. Joe Biden's key agenda is, to talk about climate change and how how we can minimize that. So absolutely, these are the two things which will drive the future of retail.
Very true. And I think how water footprint plays a very crucial role, especially in the dyeing industry, and how we have been doing it. that way. And so, yes,
Exactly. So yeah,
very, very true.
since
So,
yeah.
coming back to our previous question of, do you think there is a new pattern or a different pattern that is now evolving post pandemic, or with the wave of with the pandemic that has occurred, and is there a different pattern of business that is evolving with the industry giants?
The pattern is the same, I would say, Dr. Imani. I mean, again, we need to have the product to sell it in the stores. The only thing that changes is in the last year, everybody was doing trial and error on how to behave because all of a sudden the pandemic has then how to basically what to do nobody knew. But then everybody actually, as I said, pivoted to the alternative way of working that today we are still continuing to work. So for example, if we follow the news, Target in the US, they made money while everybody was shut because they immediately pivoted from, doing more of online business. The second
Right.
thing is you have to be conservative in buying because initially probably you don't know where what the customer how the customer demands would change, for example. So when we talk conservative
True.
buying, I think speed is coming into play because everybody wants to now order closest to the market. So I would say in the export environment, if we were taking 120 days to make a product, everybody wants to do it closest to when they can get it in stores and to so this life cycle of the product is going to get squeezed, as much as it can, which is a prime thing. So basically, it again comes to I think I mean it's just a basic a different way of articulating, but it's about agility and resilience, which has changed. I mean, last year was so pathetic from the experience that we have had that we had loads and loads of shipments which were actually sitting in
Totally
the
right.
warehouse because buyers, did not want to buy it because of store closure and stuff like that. And then there was literally a bloodbath, with the exporters. But
Oh,
then, eventually everybody thought that there is a responsibility that if the buyers will not buy, where would the exporters get the money to pay for their workers, which is also a very key role of social corporate responsibility. It's a supply
true.
chain. So yes, so basically I would say so the like the for example last year the prime minister did a lockdown. This year the impact on economy was so much that despite wanting to do a lockdown, he's not doing a lockdown because
Correct.
he feels that we will again go back in time in terms of economy. I mean, I don't want to go into what the impact is having, but some experiences are teaching us to make a good decision, some bad decision, but absolutely, we have pivoted towards, different ways of buying and selling. That is
So,
that
do
is
you think,
what the experience is.
coming from India as an Indian, do you think the social sector, or do you think the as I when we started our conversation, the indigenous products and the special core products of India and the core competencies that we have, being a skilled worker, weaver, or the crafts that we have in India, can play a big role in the revival in terms of post-pandemic culture that we are looking at?
I would
Do
say
you think with yeah,
India plays an important role. I mean, at least our second largest, I would say, GDP comes from the textile and apparel industry. So it plays an
right,
important role, and it will continue to play an important role. I mean, today India is still, one of the leading cotton producing countries in the world. And then when we
hmm,
talk about, in fact, organic cotton, 51% of organic cotton is made in India, of the world's consumption. And,
right,
I mean, we know how much domestic sector is gone so strong and export sector has been always strong. So I would say India is going to be here to stay. In terms of specifically when you talk about craftsmen and weavers and the specific India type of product, I think it's still domestically. I know when we talk of ethnic wear, this is a big market in India. I would say
correct.
overseas it's still niche, it's loved. So really, I'm not sure. I mean, I would say it wherever very few people realize the value, and then it gets sold in boutiques and all, but it is a niche product. So even when we talk Indian fashion in international market, probably it comes down to uh, in some cases a stubby fabric or embroideries or laces and stuff like that, but block printing and all that, I think that can not even happen in the mass production. But then at the same time, we have the likes of Fab India and all who have stores. It was actually started by a Britisher, and
But what I
first store
see,
in
Rinku, I would like to interrupt you here. What I see is that when we used to have our buyers coming in, I remember when we were also working together and all, they would go crazy buying Indian fashion and Indian products, so to say. And the
yeah, yeah.
markup, you remember when we did these dip dyed skirts and yarn dyed Banana Republic skirt, the markup is so high that maybe a business can flourish in terms of that. So would you have a comment on that?
So
I don't know.
dip dye is of course dip dye and tie dyes and all that. Yeah. So that is still, in fact, these days the dip dye and tie dyes are still in fashion. So I would say that is, I mean, probably it originated from India, but this is something which is now happening. China does it, Bangladesh. We didn't even think, at that time that Bangladesh would do anything outside of a basic product. But now Bangladesh is doing all kind of products. So, I mean,
Okay.
from the value add perspective, so I would say yes, embroideries, I said, but yeah, rightfully, like you said, that in terms of value add, because of cheap labor, I mean, besides the textiles and fabric part of it, we would still have, the I mean, our country would still be attractive to the foreign buyers, but I'd say in terms of, and they would still get attracted about the color and the character and the culture and diversity that the country brings in. Every region is a different embroidery. So, one day Zardozi is in fashion, then, probably you would say Ari embroidery or then chicken curry, and, so absolutely, but in bits and pieces. So very trend driven, but how much it can drive the mass market, I am not sure. But still it is not going to go away, because that is what, sells a value add. And then textiles, cotton, I mean, is not we are still strong in raw material.
Great, great. So I think we also will be taking a few questions. So what do you think? What is your final suggestion for our current batch of students or the participants that we have? So what do you think will take them ahead in the fashion and textiles industry?
I would say focus is a big thing, and focus, when we say, I mean, we wouldn't say, today immediately this is what we are looking at. So we should know where we want to reach. Like, my aim, my goal is that 5 years down the line, this is what I want to do. At the same time, I'd say that, again, what we talked about, being agile and being resilient, very important for us to also follow that at any point in time, if we feel we need to pivot to a different, something different, nothing should stop us. And then if we have the conviction and passion to pursue that, I think nothing can stop us. So this is very interesting, story again I want to tell you. And I tell me, just stop me if we have the
No, no,
time,
no. We have to
like we are bent against. So, I mean, this is something I actually heard in one of the podcasts, that Amazon, it started with selling of, books. One day, Mr. Jeff Bezos decided that he wants to leave his job and he wants to sell books online, and he went, and then he continued to diversify. And at every time he was diversifying into a new business, people were thinking, he does not have any focus. So people would, probably laugh at him. And then one of the acquisition was Whole Foods, which he actually acquired at 61% premium. And then everybody thought, especially the Wall Street thought that he had gone crazy. I mean, okay to do electronics and, those many categories and all, but why would he sell groceries on an Amazon? But he was
correct.
very clear in his mind that grocery is something which a customer will come and buy twice in a week. Electronics, probably he'll buy once a year. So if he would visit the site twice a week, probably, something else would also attract her. So your vision and your focus has to be very clear. But that doesn't mean that tomorrow, today, if it is not working out, you stick to that. I mean, like we say that the leading suppliers, number one, number two, number three suppliers in India started to make the masks and PP kits. So pivot, as relevant. Don't get stuck to that, okay, you are so big and you are actually shipping for the leading brands, a garment which is 10, 20, $30 FOBs. Why? I mean, would you do a $1 mask? Absolutely. If the need of the hour is that, that is should be. So
Adaptability is the need.
yeah, adaptability is the need. Exactly, like you well said. So have a strong conviction, I'd say, have a clear purpose and pursue it with passion and will not go wrong. And one more thing I'd like to add is, never get disheartened with a failure, because that is a learning. So if one
Yes.
success is the outcome of 10 failures, I think it's absolutely worth it. So just be on the journey and we'll make the ends meet.
Oh, that's a wonderful thought. Let me quickly go to our Q&A section. Yes, we do have one question from Professor Menon. So Professor Menon is the dean of our school. He's asking us, what is your take on the social dimension of fashion? Can fashion and textiles become one of the major game changers for the social sector in India and companies become more actively involved in this sector? I think I did ask a part of this question.
I think companies already are. I mean, I would say, I mean, if we talk about social corporate responsibility, I mean, that plays a big role in the company. And, I mean, we have such strong audit bodies these days that we have to take care of the fact that if we are hiring a workforce, there is no child labor, and then we are meeting a minimum, I would say, wages. And then if there is an overtime, there is a certain standard of overtime. Forget that, even the working condition in terms of what kind of water is provided, is the loo clean or not. So I think absolutely there is already a lot of work that has been done in terms of, talking about the social sector. I think we are on the great path, and especially we have the presence of international, customers from all, retailers from all over the world who are very, very cautious about their reputation. So absolutely, they have the commitment towards the social corporate responsibility. And I mean, the factories here, the sector cannot produce for the brands unless they meet those parameters. So already there is a great job done, and we keep on. I mean, there have been some popular, I would say, documentaries on BBC. They catch hold of some child labor doing, an embroidery, and then it becomes a news, and then brands have to come and defend themselves. So I would say, I mean, the country is already very active. Absolutely, we can do a better job, because we still feel that our country is, much below the poverty line. But then, if we are defining wages, that comes again. Then you have to find a balance, because ultimately the costs are driven by what government posts. But yes, I mean, personally, I feel we are already on that journey.
So I think, Rinku, that is more towards the social responsibility. We can, and as I earlier asked, are we even looking at the social dimension of fashion in terms of how, employment generation, in terms of what skills that we have, as we talked about earlier about crafts and handloom and the typical strengths of India, so to say. Are we looking at the social dimension of fashion in terms of that, in terms
So,
of
so yeah,
employability,
so
better education?
it is already into place, especially when I say for weaker section, because in every company, again, you have the training centers where, it is free training that is provided to the workers from, across the globe. And then people like you and me only teach there in terms of basic stitching, in terms of, checking, finishing, and that is absolutely free of cost. If at all, government pays money for them to come and learn. And once, the companies train them as per the requirement, they get absorbed to actually work as, dedicated workers in that industry. So already, government is again working on training the people of, especially the strata of the society which is under the poverty line, and get them to work, work. There are multiple schools here, especially for economic sector. And then, yeah, I think I hope I'm able to answer that question. Or is it specific?
So we also have another question from Tajinder. She's with us in the fashion and textiles department only. So Tajinder is asking us, would you like to know what kind of, I would like to know what kind of challenges are faced by a retailer by being online in this pandemic time? It's a good question. Also, one common issue in online shopping in this pandemic time is that the product if it's a garment is not cannot be exchanged or refunded. So it's more of a customer's concern that we have here in the second bit of the question. But what are the challenges you feel are faced by a retailer by being online?
So retailer by being online is today, we have multiple retailers who are selling online, either on their platform or, on a broader platform. I would say the competition has become tough because, the customer has the visibility. So
Hmm.
tomorrow, a customer, if he had to visit a physical store, he could go into two, three, four. But now, I mean, he has a visibility. Probably, if I'm looking for something, I'll open 10 sites and I look at the product, and then, whichever ones I like, I would want to buy. So there, I would say, unless I have a specific special USP, I would not be able to compete. And this could be, better innovation, better pricing, more attractive product, and how where are you placed in that platform that the customer is able to catch the eye, one part of it. Secondly, I would say in terms of challenges is again service level plays an important role because customer is the king. So another challenge is either if you don't have a refund policy, then again a customer will probably think twice before buying. If you have a refund policy, then a customer might not want, and at times your logistics costs become higher than the actual cost of the product. So we used to
Right.
hear till today, the likes of Mintras and so many online other retailers actually burn so much of cash every year just to stay in the marketplace. And so it is really tough. Again, another thing, basically I did some more working, some extra reading on Amazon from this question. And again, very interesting story that today Amazon is eating all these small time online retailers because the minute he feels that a particular retailer is doing good in that space, he wants to introduce his product. So from that angle, unless you have a sizable business, you really end up your business is almost on the verge of probably at breaking even. So again, big market players. I mean, today, I mean, I think I heard Reliance has become one of the leading online retailers in the world. So I would say
Hmm.
marketplace is very tough. The competition is really tough. So you have to be really ahead of the game to be successful on this in this space.
Right,
Unless you are backed up with again, probably brick and mortar or multiple businesses.
right, right. I think we have another question here, which is interesting from Marina. Marina is also with us in the School of Design. Brands like H&M, known to have started as a fast fashion brand, are coming up with initiatives like H&M Conscious. Do you think it is a good attempt at slow fashion? Yeah, that's a good question. In the current
Yes.
situation, how can one shop sustainably, considering online purchase produce more packaging waste? Oh yes, yeah.
So this is wow. So this is but the first question. I think I already talked about it that the fast fashion brands are getting a lot of flack about the landfills because I don't remember the statistics, but the apparel industry is one industry which actually contributes to global warming and all the environmental hazards that are getting created. So absolutely, I think this is a right time. If they don't move now, that they would lag behind. They have to come to to adopt sustainability as one of the key messages in terms of the product that they are selling. And again, the big message is recycle, reuse, replenish. And so where at some point in time, what was fashion was you wear, you discard, and you get a new one and you discard. And these days it is, buy an expensive product, buy a classy product which is going to stay a long time. So if they do not, I mean, if they do not actually, I would say, engage in these initiatives, they will lag behind because the customer has become so aware that if you're, I mean, he's ready to pay extra if it has a label of an organic or a sustainable product. So absolutely, they take pride that they are also contributing in towards the climate change by buying a product which is which is sustainable. So in the industry, especially if I'm talking from commercial angle, sustainability is the big thing. and the top leaders are talking about sustainability. I mean, not at a junior level, but it is driven from the corporate level. So very good question. And yes, absolutely the awareness and the requirement. Even in Zara, they are talking Join the Life, which is all sustainable products. So, and initially Zara would take
I think
pride
all
in,
the brands and best of the designers, Rinku, for that matter.
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it doesn't feel different, if I'm wearing an organic cotton shirt or a non-organic cotton shirt. I mean, for an organic, probably I'm paying, 30% extra premium. But then, I mean, being an aware citizen and a responsible citizen, at least I am doing my bit in contributing by not buying something, which is the outcome of something which is an impact, negative impact to nature.
So I think it's important to make a right conscious decision of what you are buying and what you're wearing on you is very, very important.
Absolutely.
I think we'll take one another question, which is from Professor Menon. As someone who works in the sourcing arena, do companies today actually benchmark products with these larger concerns, such as what you've just mentioned, like
Yes, I think
sustainability,
it's a
buying the
great
product?
question, and it is a great question, and that is actually what is taking, I would say, 30% of our time, Professor Menon, and I'll tell you how. Uh, uh, for example, I'm working for this company, Target Australia, and we buy a lot of organic product. And if, I mean, what has happened, organic product, you have to have clear certification and traceability of the organic product, as we might be aware. So what has been happening is, because there has been so much of demand, people were selling product which was not organic, and they were creating fake certificates. So today,
Hmm.
there was, more demand than supply, and all of a sudden the price of organic product had risen from last year to this year. It is more than double for the organic yarn. If we have a, if as a brand, my customer is used to buying organic, so we have taken a hit in pricing. And my conversation with all the suppliers is, what are the other retailers doing? They say that people are pre-positioning the raw material, but if they have committed to sustainable goals, they cannot go back on that. So not just
Right.
me, I'm talking for industry as a whole. All the leading retailers are talking sustainability. They have a certain goal which they have already committed publicly, and absolutely, they are buying wherever they can. Most of the raw material is bought sustainable, in a sustainable manner. So today, for all the cotton business that I'm doing, is all BCI cottons. 15% of what I'm doing is organic cotton. Polyester, we know that the pricing, if I from a regular recycled polyester, we will need to pay some 6 to 10% extra price, but our buyers are ready to do that because, I mean, we need to, and probably it will not, we won't be able to increase the retail price, and it would be a hidden margin, for for a supplier, for a retailer. But a sustainability goal, everybody is totally committed to, and they're working towards that.
So I think, as we rightly say, the definition of luxury has changed in terms of what you're buying. You want to buy something
True.
which is sustainable, which is true to nature, next to nature, and that is the real luxury nowadays, rather than investing in something
Absolutely.
which is comparatively, of a lesser
That would be
price.
called,
And
yeah, that will be called delinquent. So it's
yeah,
basically responsible buying, responsible sourcing is are the buzzwords. So literally, yes.
great, great. I think this has been a very interesting session. I don't see more questions here, Rinku. So, I think it has been really inspiring to talk to you and to have you here with us. And I think personally, I would say how effortlessly you manage to stay on top of your game, and that's been a key factor for everybody to take on from here. And I think we look forward to having you for future sessions as well.
That's very
So, thank
kind of you, I would say. And the pleasure is all mine. And thank you for some great questions. And I think when it comes to learning, it's mutual. So, I mean, I think I've picked up a lot from you and from the questions. And thank you so much. And I wish you guys all the very best.
thank you so much. And for all of us who have joined us here, thank you so much again. And I think I'll close this session with your personal motto, which says stay resilient and live one day at a time. So
So,
stay
and
healthy,
stay
stay
safe.
safe. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Bye bye. Thank you so much.
All
It
right.
was really
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Likewise. Thank you.